Hello everyone, Ember Power here, and welcome to 24 new Brilliant Star Arceus deck lists from Japan. As always, if you have any questions, let me know down below. I will try and go through these relatively quickly, but I will bring up decks that I do think have a decent chance of, being very competitively viable. But overall, I do think there's a couple of rogue decks in here. There's nothing like over the moon competitive in some of them, but there is like potential, rogue tier 2, tier 3 kind of archetypes that would be interesting to go over. So without further ado, getting into like the contents of the series, and I said deck there, didn't I? But contents of the series. In the previous video, I looked at Aurora Box style deck lists for Arceus, and then now I'm looking at Arceus partner decks. I'm not sure if I've left it too late to cover one prize budget decks that I found from Japan, or decks with budgets, like decks with buffs, sorry. So like Shadow Rider with Whimsicott. If people would like to see sample lists from overseas, then please let me know in the comment section and I'll gladly cover them. But without further ado, getting into the first deck list we have here is Dragonite. And I'm personally surprised that this hasn't received more interest in the West already, because Dragonite seems like the perfect candidate for Arceus, because it has an attack that's very awkward to power it up, so you have to use Arceus to do so. And for 2 water and lightning, it does 250 damage and then 20 damage to each of your benched Pokemon, which is a bit of a setback, but the 250 is a really nice number because with a choice belt, you're doing 280, and that's a 1-hit KO on all the other V-Star Pokemon. And then in the following set, we will also see the release of a Howlucha that reduces the HP of VMAX by about 30. So what that Howlucha will essentially let you do is hit 310, which is a great number against stuff like Mew. And then, of course, because you're playing Inteleon, you could be able to find Leon and then therefore get a 1-hit KO on other VMAX and stuff. So I do think there's a lot of merit to Dragonite V. It's also fairly tanky, having 230 HP, so if you really wanted to, you could like run a split of Choice Belts and Capes of Toughness, although I do think Choice Belts are better in this deck. This list also plays one Vikavolt V for the item lock. I think this was more of a item lock situational tech card to see like how good it could be in the current format, because in the past item lock has been very good, but I don't know if it's still going to be good now. 50 damage was obviously abysmal for item lock, but it allowed you to have access to Electro Power when Vikavolt was really good. And then, of course, with this format, we have Choice Belt, so hitting 80 is pretty good. So maybe Vikavolt is worth it. And then the classic Inteleon line. I'm not sure yet if Inteleon is needed in this sort of deck, but I guess if you're trying to find individual pieces like Choice Belt, Escape Rope, Leon's, Melanie's, Raihan's, Piers, all the rest of it, then I guess that kind of makes sense. This list also plays a Crobat, a Zigzagoon, and a Manaphy for that crucial bench protection. And then, energy count is what you'd kind of expect from this kind of build. So moving on a bit, we have Gyarados. I'm not sure how viable Gyarados could ever actually be in standard format, but it does have a good placement in type coverage, being that you are weak to lightning. There's nothing terribly threatening apart from Raichu, maybe. And you are hitting weakness on Charizard and Entei, which look to be really good moving forward. So there is that at least. But why this deck is like, I guess, receiving some interest is because a lot of Pokemon can't really one-hit KO other VMAX right now. So Gyarados essentially just tanking a hit and then throwing stuff back at the opponent with its massive venting anger attack, doing, I think it's 30 damage. 20. It's either 30 or 20. I think it's 30 for each damage counter on Gyarados V. It's been so long since I've seen the card because it's, not been talked about at all. But either way, this could be an interesting deck. Like, there's a lot of Arceus running around, so if you use Arceus first, you power up Arceus, then they smack your Gyarados for like 200 damage or something, then I'm pretty sure you just get a 1-hit KO at that point. So I do think there is some merit to Gyarados, and this is probably like the best Gyarados list that there has been, but I don't think it will be like too competitively viable. Note the 1-1 line of Jolteon as well. That's interesting. I think Jolteon prevents certain abilities from being played. I forget which one though. I think it might be just water type abilities, but I've forgotten what that Jolteon actually does as well. Bad day for memory, but I can't actually remember. Someone can let me know, it'd be handy. But yeah, that's it for Gyarados. Moving on a little bit to a very blurry image, apologies, is actually Dragapult, which last format, I would say, and the format before it, Dragapult was doing really well. It was in a good position, but unfortunately, it's sort of fallen out of popularity because it's just like better psychic type attackers, i.e., Mew. So there's no real reason to play Dragapult. However, the ability, not the ability rather, but the effect of placing 5 damage counters on something to soften it up is still really good. Hitting 130 obviously is still very good. And then now with Choice Belt, you can do 160. So 160 now means that you can reach Urshifu territory. And it does mean that, well, it's not exactly on point kill on Urshifu, but you're still getting there. 1 at 60, and then, with internal things, you could probably get there. But also just 160 in general, say this for the third time, 160 just allows you to just like 2-hit KO most things, and it also let you 2-hit KO V-Stars rather efficiently. And it also only requires 2 energy, so it's pretty easy to set up. And then there's also a Zapdos V in here, just to take care of, Eternatus and stuff. I think Eternatus and Gengar are going to be on the rise, so having a Zapdos in here is nice. Also covering Arceus weakness is pretty cool, so Zapdos makes a lot of sense. And then there's also a Crobat, a Luminion, and then an Enteion package. So what do I think of Dragapult? Is it going to be very good or not? I'm not so sure yet. I don't think it will ever be the same power level that it has been before. But I do think, as I said before, with like Gyarados, this is probably like the best alliteration of Dragapult there is in standard right now. So if you are a real big fan of Dragapult and you just want to play Dragapult, then this is probably your best bet. So moving on, we have a Rapid Strike Arceus build. I did showcase a few Rapid Strike / Aurora box decks last time, but I will just showcase this one. It's a one that's more likely to be reminiscent of the Sylveon Urshifu box, but I do think it's worth showing off. It has plenty attackers that we're all going to talk about, obviously. So 4-2 Arceus line is a bit of an interesting split. You are playing 3 different types of basic energy, so I have to wonder if this is because starting Arceus V is so important, because it will just allow you to use that first attack, if nothing else. So just searching your deck for basic energies and attach them to your bench guys, so I think that is important. A 2-1 line of Urshifu is a bit sketch. I would rather have a 2-2 line. But still, Urshifu, again, like we said before, Zapdos, having great weakness coverage, and this coverage, rather. And yeah, this list is obviously running 1 Zapdos V as well. Then we see a 2-1 line of Sylveon. I'm not sure why this player is thinking a 2V, 1V max kind of split. 4-2 line of Arceus. Not really what I would have gone for, but if it works for them, it works for them. And the Sylveon obviously covering the Urshifu weakness, which is nice. Then 2 Moltres for the very stereotypical Mew weakness. And then 1 Zamazenta V, one of the new ones, that with a double turbo and a metal energy will add and a belt as well, actually. Will get a 1-hit KO on an Ice Rider Calyrex if they've just knocked out your Arceus. So that's important. So you're covering weakness on Urshifu, Arceus, Mew, Ice Rider, Gengar, Eternatus. Yeah, you're covering like a lot of different weaknesses, really. The only thing you're not covering is Fire type weakness to water, which is why, Gyarados versus Samaritan Gyarados here. But yeah, interesting list. Will it be super great? I'm not so sure. Could this be a better version of the Sylveon box we have right now? I'm not 100% sure either on that note. I do think the Sylveon box should make more use of the Moltres, the Zapdos, and the Zamazenta, though, at the very least. But is Arceus the way to go? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not so sure yet. So this is more of the classic Aurora box style decks that we'll see a lot. I think this kind of deck will be played an awful lot in its lifetime because it just seems like such a safe pick to play with Arceus. It's also post-rotation friendly, fun fact. So yeah, you could probably build this, and then the only thing you're losing is the Crobats. So 2-2 line of Arceus, pretty bulk standards, what do you expect? 2 Moltres for the Mew weakness, and then a Hoopa for the same weakness as well, though Hoopa will allow you to hit Urshifu for weakness, which is great. You also play a Zapdos in here for that all important Gengar Eternatus stuff. A Vikavolt again for the item log. I thought it was worth it. 1 Luminion V, 2 Crobat V, 1 Ditto V to turn into any attacker that you need it to be. Didn't mean to make that rhyme, but it did. 2 Mew from Celebrations. Japan does seem to be a big fan of Mew. I'm not sure if it's impacting on the West yet enough. I don't think people over here like Mew as much, but still interesting to see. And then that is a Hoopa from Darkness Ablaze. So Hoopa, interesting inclusion. I'm not sure why it's needed. I think it's kind of to deal with Meloetta's a bit better, but you could probably tell me. I don't know why. Trainer count is pretty box standard for these kind of lists. 4 bosses order, kind of what you expect. 4 different types of energy. You will see like jarring counts of energy for a lot of these decks, but yeah, I do think it's worth it just to play a decent split of everything and see what runs. But yeah, I do think this has potential to be competitive. It's not lacking, not lacking is not the right word. Lacking is the right word. A draw engine like Barbarrel or Inteleon could be problematic potentially, but you are playing 2 Crobat, 1 Dominion, and then of course you have Starbirth, so yeah, it might be alright. So Ice Rider, Arceus, Barbarrel is the list we're looking at today. This list is also slightly more advanced in the format in the sense that it is playing a Stormy V, which it will only release in the West in our set afterwards. And if you want to know what Stormy V does, it does 50 damage for each energy attached to all your opponent's Pokemon, which is going to be really strong against a lot of Arceus builds as well as the upcoming Darkrai. So that's why that's in here. And then a Miltank, which does have an okay attack for a DCE, double turbo rather. But it's mainly here because it actually walls out Pokemon V. So if you're looking to play something, so like if you're looking to play Ice Rider, I guess long term in a way, this is a kind of build I would look into. Obviously, you can't, play this build in a tournament right now without the Miltank and the Starmie, but it is worth like looking ahead almost and seeing how this deck could look like, not within just the set that's out now, but in the set that's out later on. So Ice Rider, of course, doing the max lance attack, doing like 250, I think it is, discarding 2 energy. And then with a choice belt, you're doing 280. It's obviously a great number to hit for 2 energy. It's amazing. And also with like the downfall of Zacian right now, then it kind of makes sense for Ice Rider to be popping up more and being able to capitalize on Entei and Charizard weakness. So great deck. Also interesting is the 1 copy of Pumpkaboo and the 3 Path to the Peak, obviously favoring the disruption. And this list does play a 2-2 line of Barbarrel. I do think that's pretty cool because sometimes like the Weezing will see loads of play, and then Weezing just kind of shuts down your entire Inteleon line, which is, like a 4-3-2 line sometimes, or even more. But Barbarrel is only taking up 2-2 slots, and it's like equal consistency in a way, so I do like the idea of pairing Barbarrel with Ice Rider and Arceus. So moving on, this is just like more of a standard list that you can play right now. This is, what is this? Oh yeah, this is Ice Rider, Arceus, and Inteleon. Lost my train of thought there for a second. This is like your kind of box standard deck if you were looking to, build something that's competitive, tier 1.5, tier 1 kind of deck. I would take this. It's nothing completely jaw-droppingly unique. There's no flashy text. There's no one of Zapdos, one of Aurora Energy kind of stuff going on. It's very streamlined, very linear, very consistent. I don't know if Inteleon is the way to go. Like, is Inteleon really necessary in this deck? But Inteleon seems to be great with Ice Rider, so yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, there's not really a lot to say about this deck. It's just kind of like what we talked about before, but like a bit more streamlined, a bit more consistent. Inteleon, more consistent than Barbarrel, but does suffer quite badly to things like Glaring Weezing is the word. So moving on a little bit, unfortunately, this was the only image I could find for this deck list. Usually, like as of late, there's been these nice image formats, but sadly, this was not. This was an exception. This is a 3-3 line of Arceus with a 2-2 line of Salamence. So Salamence VMAX, for those of you who do not remember what Salamence VMAX does, before cost energy does 240 damage, and then it can't use that attack next turn. And yeah, why this is good right now is we have ways of healing Salamence with Terran's Care, just picking the whole card up. And then we also have ways of, incorporating Choice Belt in here to do like 270, which is a good number to hit on a lot of V-Stars, except Arceus. So, and you do play Zigzagoon anyway if you really wanted to. And then it also plays 1 Dominion V, 1 Zapdos, 1 Crobat, 2 Mew, and then 1 Galarian Zigzagoon. I don't think this deck is like particularly competitive. Being a colorless type automatically means you're not hitting anything else for weakness. So this deck is kind of forced into a corner where it has to play Zapdos. I'm not sure if the numbers are really good enough, even though you have Choice Belt around and you're able to power up energy. It is nice that Salamence is getting some love, I guess, but I don't think this is like a particularly great build by any means. Moving on is like the most streamlined build of Arceus you can get, which is quite literally Arceus for the sake of Arceus. This is not right quite yet. It's not quite a quad deck, I should say, but it's the closest thing you're going to get to a quad deck for now. So if you just want to play Arceus, you can't afford anything else, you have Inteleons, then build this. Just build this. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think this is just a worse version of the Arceus Ice Rider build. Like, I don't think there's a reason not to play Ice Rider. But yeah, it's very straightforward, very consistent, does what it needs to do, has room for a Dunsparce, which is nice, so you don't have any weakness, because Urshifu and Zapdos could pop up again, so having that around, I guess, is nice, but I don't think there's any true advantage to playing this build over, Arceus Ice Rider, but this could be something that sees competitive play, because it's just so consistent, but yeah, that's all we have to say about that one. Then again, we're back to blurred images. This is Arceus Lucario Barbarrel. So Lucario usually associated with more budget rogue decks, but this deck does have some merit in the fact that, oh, you're probably thinking, why is this Arceus Lucario? Arceus powers up other V Pokemon. Why Lucario? Well, Lucario covers your own weakness and it hits other weaknesses. So like Lucario is a one prizer, that's nice. So you're only messing around with 2 prize one prizers. And Lucario actually hits weakness on stuff like Gengar, which is really popular. Eternatus, really popular. Arceus, really popular. So Lucario does make a lot of sense. I'm going to try not to say Lucario again for the rest of this deck profile. But yeah, it's got good numbers. It can do a lot of damage with Choice Belt. You play 3 Choice Belts, so it's really easy to do so. Barbarrel is really nice and consistent. It's also like one of the cheapest partners there is to play with this card. So yeah, cheap Arceus deck. Could be interesting, could be good. I'm looking personally to build a Lucario Barbarrel deck, so somewhere down the line, I might try and fit an Arceus line and see how that goes. But yeah, very interesting, very, very like anti-meta, I would say. So again, something like Mew, you're probably going to struggle. So I would possibly look into including a Moltres line somewhere in here, just like a Galarian Moltres VO2 and a couple of Dark Energy, which is what I would do if I was entering a tournament with this. But apart from that, looks pretty solid. So again, moving on to the slightly more rogue side of things, we've got Arceus Mimikyu VMAX. This was purely included for those people that love Mimikyu. I don't think Mimikyu is in a particularly great position. It's 300 HP, Psychic type, weak to Dark, which means that, Galarian Moltres is going to have a field day. It's also, like, not really spreading enough damage, in my opinion. Like, the damage spread is okay, but you have to play an Ace Rose Premonition. Yeah, we play a Power Pad. Yeah, we played 2 copies. Yeah, Starbirth can find it, which is very handy. But I'm not sure, like, if Mimikyu is ever going to be competitive, sadly. It's a cool card. Like, I will say that. It is a cool card. But I don't think it's, particularly great. Moving on swiftly, we have a couple of Leafeon builds to show off. This one is a very streamlined version of Leafeon with the Leafeon, the Arceus, and the Barbarrel. Again, you will see a lot of Barbarrel partners with Arceus because Barbarrel just adds a bit more consistency and it's very easy to set up. And then, of course, we have the Zigzagoon and Manaphy, pretty bog standard things. The most interesting thing about this list to me, though, is Leafeon V-Star, which I would have thought is a worthy inclusion because even if you don't use its V-Star power and you use Starbirth instead, I do think Leafeon V-Star is an okay attacker for what it's worth, and it is a 2-prize attacker, and this deck only has Arceus to fill that slot in. So, yeah, interesting build. I do think it's interesting worth noting that this deck plays a 1-off Water Energy, which is roughly implying you could attack with Luminium V if you really wanted to. I don't know if this person thinks Charizard's going to be top tier broken or something, but I don't think that's where your priorities are. I would just run a 6th Grass Energy, but I guess it can't hurt, really. Either way, interesting deck. So this one, again, we're looking at more streamlined. This one cuts the Barbarrel list, though, entirely in favor of some more techs. This one plays the Yveltal. that discard special energy, definitely here for Mew. And then the Hoopa, definitely here for Mew, but also Urshifu, which is nice, so you're covering a lot of weakness. And then it also plays a Crobat VMAX. I'm not sure why Crobat likes Japan. Why Japan likes Crobat VMAX so much. I'm really not a fan of that card, but some people are. So if you're playing a wheezing line in this as well, because why not? Then sure, Crobat VMAX may be okay, but I don't think it's necessary here. It's also kind of a disruptive list. You know, we've got the Avery going on, we've got the Fan of Waves, the like the 3-off Galar Mine. There is a supporter card down there next to Fan of Waves. I have seen that card before, but I don't remember what it does. If it's just like a research, then that's fine, but I generally don't remember what that card does. I think it's Japan only as well right now, so interesting list. Moving on to maybe a more competitive build of the deck, apart from the maybe the Barbaro build, is Leafeon with Arceus and Moltres. Again, Leafeon Moltres has always been this like roguish kind of deck, but Leafeon will obviously struggle maybe in a format that's kind of dominated by V-Stars. However, having said that, the most dominant V-Star potentially coming up is Darkrai, who happens to be weak to Grass. So playing something like Leafeon makes a lot of sense because it's going to cover that weakness nicely. It's going to cover other Galarian Moltres weakness. And then you're playing 2 Moltres obviously yourself to get rid of Muse. So yeah, counters a lot of potentially competitive viable decks. And if Leafeon, tanks in price over the next few weeks, it would be worth picking a few up just in case, you feel like it's worth it to counter Darkrai. So moving on to possibly a more underrated choice, I think, of this format. I think people are conscious that this deck is around the corner. They just don't want to admit it, and that's the amazing Duraludon tank. So Duraludon always been like, I guess it's always had like a presence in the format ever since people worked it out. It could be like really good with Zacian, but then now it doesn't even need Zacian. It can just have Arceus, and so you can just Arceus into Duraludon. It's a pretty cool deck. Duraludon obviously having the merit in that it can ward out special energy, and then 220 going through effect is obviously really good as well because it's just a guaranteed 2 kill all the time. Then we have stuff like Crushing Hammers to slow the opponent down. We have even Team Yell Towels to deal off some damage. Yeah, there's not really like loads of potionally based stuff in here. Potionally based, yeah, it's a real world. What is my spelling today? Real word. But yeah, I do think this is competitive. Just go from like silly talk about words to competitive. But yeah, I do think this is competitive. Will it see loads of play initially? Maybe not, but once people realize just how good this deck is, I think it will see more play. It's an annoying tank to deal with, and then all the one prizers that are potentially being tested and played will obviously struggle to get through Duraludon's walling capabilities, since it's a 330, potentially 360 HP tanking heal that one it kills some one prizers every turn. So yeah, I'd be very afraid of this deck right now. So moving on is a slightly less competitive variant of like what we've seen before. This is kind of like the Mimikyu list, basically. It's Malamar Arceus. I do like Malamar VMAX seeing some love and attention, but I think it's a little bit too late for this because, yeah, it counters Mew VMAX, which is cool. And again, I'll say, this is like the best variant of this deck that exists in Standard, like the best variant of Malamar, VMAX rather. But unfortunately, I think Malamar comes a little bit too late. Having weak to grass isn't so much of the issue, especially like even if Leafeon rises up. But I think the main weakness in Malamar is obviously it's a 3-prizer that has to trade efficiently into 2-prizers now. So I do think Malamar will struggle in that department, even though it can disrupt really well. So moving on, we have Agron, who a lot of people have called the worst VMAX. There is one shred of merit, I think, that Agron has, in that its first attack does 150 damage for 3 energy, which is okay with a belt because it's doing 180 and that one it kills an Ice Rider for weakness. So getting rid of like potentially a tier 1 deck is obviously a good counterplay. It's also like kind of relying on there being no fire type presence in an event for this to go far and for you to like encounter loads of Ice Rider. But either way, I don't think this deck is terrible. Its second attack for 5 energy or something ludicrous does like 270, but this damage. But like this deck doesn't play any way of recovering energy, so and you're only playing 9. So like yeah, I wouldn't risk it. Either way, interesting, funny deck. Again, one of the more cheaper ones. I'd probably play this over the Malamar and Mimikyu one, but that's just because I like Agron sometimes. I kind of like Agron. It's a cool Pokemon. But either way, moving on, we have Arceus Senscorch. Senscorch not really been doing a whole lot ever since the loss of Welder. And this list is kind of like what you'd expect. Playing like 4 Crushing Hammers, 4 Team Yell, Towel, putting an emphasis on like Disrupt and Heal. I do kind of like these tanky sort of builds. I think it's cool. Interesting trainer count as well. There's like a path to the peak in here, as well as 1 Magma Basin. So this person obviously doesn't think Magma Basin alone will save Senti. It has to be Arceus primarily. And then 2 Schoolgirl, which allow you to draw a bunch of cards throughout the game. 2 Research and Insurance Care, and 1 Coke. So definitely an interesting split of supporters, interesting Pokemon line, only playing 2 of your sort of, I guess, main attacker. So yeah, interesting build for sure. I'm not sure if Scorch has what it takes, especially with Ice Rider coming around and just thrashing everything to oblivion. But yeah, could be a fun road pick. So again, moving on to sort of a roguish build is Arceus Delmise, because we need more grass types in the format, and Delmise is good. Like, Delmise is generally a good card. It does 240 damage for 3 energy. With a choice belt, that's 270. It's pretty good. I would run a Zigzagoon here just so you can hit 280, because it's, it's a magic number of Arceus. You might as well try. And then 1 Zarude V. So, like, this deck is going on the fact that if you, like, use, what's the card? Skater Park Stadium. So I think LDF, Little Dark Fury, brought this up in a video recently, whereby if you have Zarude healing your Delmise, how you can like pull it off is essentially Delmise takes damage, retreats into Zarude, then with Skater Park, you put the energy into your hand, and then use Zarude to power up Delmise again, and you just reattach it, and essentially reset Delmise, all while doing a decent amount of damage. So, cool deck, cool deck in general. Not really hitting anything for weakness yet is a bit of a problem, but again, playing like hammers helps with the disruption. Not sure if Dalmise really has what it takes to be competitive. Again, being a 3-prizer is annoying, but at least you're like one at carrying other Vs, so interesting. Then we have the infamous Rayquaza. I'm not going to spend too much time with Rayquaza because I know a lot of people are still a bit salty about, predicting that Rayquaza would be this amazing top tier deck. Didn't go anywhere. Rayquaza flopped, as you would say. So I guess that just leaves people wondering, what has this deck got to offer? Well, it does have a few things to offer. 2 of them being from Arceus himself, of course. The accelerating 3 energy is really good, and then the ability of Starbirth, just being able to find whatever you need, so you can go find your Flaffy, your Rays, and stuff. So I do think there is a little bit of merit to Ray, and it's not worth writing off just yet. But I would also be cautious that this is not an amazing deck. It's also post-rotation friendly. So I've not really been talking about rotation much in this video, but again with stuff like Mimikyu, again with stuff like this, it is post-rotation. So if you're looking for a long-term build of a deck that you really like, then this is probably one for you. Moving on a wee bit, we have a sort of a Raichu deck, but also more of just an electric box deck. We see the Vikavolt again. There's a Zekrom in here. There's 2 Raichu for the amazing spark burst attack, doing 60 damage for each lightning energy you discard. I think this could be a cool deck. Lack of a Raikou is interesting. I still think something like Raikou V would be good in here, but obviously this person doesn't think it's necessary. But either way, cool build. No, I'm kind of speeding up a bit towards the end, but I don't really have loads to say about these 2 decks primarily. It's a cool deck, but I don't think Raichu V will have much of a presence on the format. So moving on to another kind of Raichu deck, but playing Bolton line, so 3-2 Bolton VMAX line. And then this obviously has the plus side of, Arceus accelerating 3 lightning energy from the deck, and then Flappy getting more back is pretty good. But unfortunately, Bolton yet again has the issue of being a VMAX that's a 3-prizer, so you're now inefficiently trading into stuff like Shaman, Whimsicott, Arceus, and of course you need a lot of energy in play to do a lot of damage. You don't have ways to cheat out lightning energy apart from Flaffy. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of Bolton. I do think the weakness to fighting is also a bit detrimental because there's just so many ways we can now power fighting type attackers and get them into play quickly. So yeah, I'd be worried about that. So moving on a wee bit, we have a Arceus in Talion VMAX build. This one obviously putting more emphasis on the Mew from Celebrations again and the Pumpkaboo, which is cool. Nice to see Pumpkaboo, always nice to see Pumpkaboo. However, this Inteleon, questionable. I'm not sure about it. It has some good attacks, right? Like the 160 for 3 is good, and then 60 snipe to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon again is good. And if people like ever stop playing Manaphy, which I think people will keep playing Manaphy for a while just to try and send off Urshifu and Jolteon from the format for a little bit, I do think that something like this could be okay because 160 good to it KO, and then with Telescopic Sight, you doing like 90 to a bench Crobat, you could essentially have a full price card turn in 2 hits, which is cool. But yeah, I'm not so sure. But if you've got some Inteleons lying around and you're bored with your Arceus deck, then maybe you could give this a shot. So moving on, I think this is like the last deck of the video actually. But this is Gengar, Arceus, Weezing, Barbarrel. Probably my favorite of the list so far. And that's just because it's like another way to play Gengar. Gengar is a cool attacker, but it does suffer from being a single strike Pokemon, and single strike decks are typically inconsistent. Whereas this build, you can sort of negate that with Starbirth. You have like Weezing, you have Barbarrel. Weezing's good, honestly, in this format. There's still loads of Inteleon kicking around, and Weezing really shuts him down. Shuts down Malamar as well. So a bunch of good partners, like good cheap deck. I do like all the Pokemon here as well, so it's like a plus side. Cool deck, very cool deck. Not sure if it will be like top tier broken like this particular variant. I still think the Arceus sort of Gengar by barrel list itself will be just more consistent, but the Weezing package is pretty cool and nice to see. If anything, I would just want a 1-1 line of some kind of fighting type, maybe a Zapdos V, because or even like post rotation, I would swap out Weezing for Lucario because you just want a way to counter, your weakness, because yeah, it could get pretty scary being weak to fighting, and you're playing weak to fighting stuff. So yeah, so that's basically it for these decks. Let me know which is your favorite down below, and yeah, I hope you see you next time. Thank you for watching.